Sound check. Katie, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Sound good.
Okay, are we ready to start?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, April 4th, and I'd like to call to order our school board meeting. Board members who are present in the boardroom are members Lesson, Jacobs, and Donley. Board members present online are members Wilson, Holloman, and Bellamy. Present in the boardroom, we have Ellie Shaw, our student representative. We have Katie Grant, the executive assistant. And of course, we have Dr. Bishop and her staff. So we'd like to welcome you to our meeting. Ms. Shaw, can you lead us into the pledge? Lead us with the pledge.
Yes, ma'am.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. And now our land acknowledgement, please.
On behalf of the Anchorage School Board, I want to take a moment to recognize and offer gratitude for the sacred ancestral lands of the Dena'ina people. We acknowledge and appreciate that our offices, facilities, and schools are on these sacred indigenous lands, and we honor the traditional care that has been given to this land throughout generations. We are grateful for the opportunity to grow, learn, work, and create educational communities on this sacred land. We extend continued respect for the many cultures, creativity, and resilience of its indigenous peoples. Tanan.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. So again, we'd like to welcome everyone, whether in the boardroom or online. We'd like to welcome you to our meeting and thank you for attending, and to thank you for also supporting the work of the Anchorage School District and the work of this board. The board thanks its students, parents, teachers, staff, partners, and the entire community for your investment in our district. And that investment includes your time, your talents, and your tax dollars. So welcome. That brings us to item 3, which is the approval of our agenda.
Madam President, I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second that we accept the agenda as approved. As presented. Katie, we're going to have to do a vote because we are we're half and half tonight.
Member Donnelly.
Yeah. Yes.
Member Holloman.
Yes.
Member Jacobs.
Yes.
Member Lessons.
Yes.
Member Wilson.
Yes.
President Bellamy.
Yes.
Madam President,
yes.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
I would like to go on record as saying happy birthday to Ellie Shaw. She came this evening on the day of her birth, however many years ago. We won't embarrass her and ask, but I would like us to acknowledge her birthday on this 4th day of April in 2022.
And that was thank you. That was right after we approved the agenda. That was the point of order. So that would be great, Dr. Bishop. Thank you. So if we can just finish this approval of the agenda, looks like that we have the agenda. The motion passes to approve the agenda as presented. And now that brings us to the birthday girl. I know you didn't think you'd get away with not having us sing happy birthday to you today, but we are going to sing happy birthday to Ellie and embarrass her real thoroughly. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ellie. Happy birthday to you and many more. Anyway, happy birthday, Ellie.
Thank you.
And now that's, thank you, Dr. Bishop. That really was, we did need to do that for our, on her birthday, she still gave us her time. I don't know, that's pretty special. Thank you. So now that brings us to item B on our agenda. And before we call up, we have our Native Advisory Committee that will be presenting tonight, or at least sharing information with us tonight. And then, but before we do that, I would like to have just a moment of silence for Representative Don Young and his family. And may his memory be a blessing to all of us. So now that brings us to our Native Advisory Committee. I can't see the boardroom. Are we?
Could you please come forward? Hi. And if you would like extra chairs for support, they can gather around you if you'd like. What do you think? You're a terrific speaker, so if you could introduce yourself, but we will pull the support around you.
I'm good to go.
And you can just, put your name on record, and then I'll turn it back over to the president. We have the speakers set.
All right. Well, welcome, and we're happy to have you. Whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Chrisia Tuzurelic, representing the Native Advisory Committee as our chairperson. The Native Advisory Committee met last on March 24th for our regularly scheduled meeting. Our next meeting will take place on April 14th from 6 to 8 p.m. here at the Ed Center. The NAC has been keeping busy this year with helping define graduation regalia policies. We helped in the hiring process of a new Title VI cultural enrichment specialist. And we've also had multiple guest speakers and visitors come to our group in the past few months. In addition, we've also been working on a resolution letter on the issue of ASD supporting the learning of Native languages in schools, which we will present to the school board at a later time. On March 29th, a few of our NAC members met with Superintendent Dr. Bishop to discuss issues and concerns of Native students. We recognize that our group believes that Indigenous education here in ASD isn't as intentional as it should be. We recognize that our Native students drop out at a higher rate than any other group, and that our Native students are more likely to fail Algebra 2 than any other group. The Native Advisory knows that the school board wants to improve these college, career, and life readiness indicators for all students in ASD. However, we would like for the school board to see our Board Connect summary for suggestions on how to improve the high dropout rates and higher failure rates of Algebra 2 students, of Native students in ASD to move closer to the Anchorage School District's goals. Thank you for your time. Tiku.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself? And I think the board would love hearing about who you are and where you go to school and your future plans before we get to engage in dialogue with you.
Okay. My hometown is Point Hope, Alaska. I lived there until I was in the 7th grade. Then I moved here to Anchorage, and I've been in ASD since, except for a quarter of my freshman year where I did go back to the village. But I'm a senior at Service High School right now, and I plan on going to Cornell this fall and this summer. I think that's it.
And so we have a full report. There is a summary of the report before you, and we have a full report going into the Board Connect And so if there's any overall thoughts or questions, Madam President, we'll turn it over to you for the board.
Thank you. And I can't, are there any questions from board members within the boardroom? Any questions for our guests?
Madam President, they're busy reading this wonderful report.
I know. I can't wait to get my copy. Can I get the presenters to just share their names one more time for the record?
I'm Chrissy Tizroilik, the chairperson of the Native Advisory Committee.
Okay. And the other student? Who is it?
She's my sister, Veronica Tizroilik.
Is she acting shy?
She's my emotional support.
Okay. Okay. Well, I love it. You guys, this is absolutely great. I can't wait I look in your resolution on languages. And I do appreciate all the work that you have and the committee has done with the regalia, the graduation regalia. And I look forward to seeing that policy in action when we have our graduation.
Member Donnelly,
is there a hand in the boardroom?
Madam President, it's Member Donnelly.
Yes. Yes, Member Donnelly.
Madam Superintendent, there are a couple of suggestions in the report are really intriguing, and I was wondering if they really require board action, or there are things that could be done on the local, the individual school level. And one was the exploring an elective where students in advanced math can be peer teachers for lower level math classes. That seems like a really good thing that principals could handle on their own. Is there something the board would need to do to facilitate that?
Through the president, no. Actually, they are here to give a report on all the work they've done. The majority of these things are administrative, but this is the board requested an update from this group. So they're sharing with you what they're working on. What they have that will be coming is a board item because it's policy. So they want to suggest a policy through a resolution, but these are items that they've been working on. Very thorough, very, very good work and thoughtful. And they wanted to, Madam President asked for an update from the committee. And so they're just sharing their update, but absolutely at the school level, at the administrative level. Yeah.
Well, it just seems like a great idea. Thank you for bringing those up.
Thank you. Member, I think I see Member Lesson's hand up, and then I heard Member Holloman.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Ladies, thank you for bringing this report to us today. I sincerely appreciate the work that went into it, and I look forward to reading it and studying it in detail. And I wanted for the public, if I may, just to read some of the conclusion, to read it into the record so that the public can hear what you had to say. And that is that these issues of college, career, and life readiness indicate a larger issue of cultural disconnect between Indigenous peoples and Western education. Open dialogue is very important to making the change. So I appreciate this step towards open dialogue and collaboration on behalf of our students.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Holloman and then Member Jacobs.
Yes, you mentioned in here some direct supports to teachers to be able to do a little bit better. I'm wondering if there are supports you feel like need to be there for students. And then as a follow-up question, I'll go ahead and give you in advance. You mentioned that you were back in your home village during your freshman year. I was just curious if you felt like that moved you further, if that was an elevation, or if leaving to go back to your village and coming back to Anchorage was a disruption. We worry a lot about students that move a lot, that just because that's an indicator sometimes of a problem, but I can see where it could also be a big asset. But I am interested if there are things we could be doing directly for students that we're not.
Thank you, Member Holloman. Does either of our guests have a comment to make?
Yeah, I do, about the follow-up question on me going back to my home village during my freshman year, it was definitely a disrupt, particularly in my math and my science. It's just so differently how like the freshman class was grouped for their schedules. And then when I came back here, I was actually supposed to be in biology, but because of how the schedules worked in the village, I was in physical science. So over my Christmas break, I had to complete semester 1 biology online to move into the in-person biology class for second semester. But something that really supported me was having my classmates actually basically tutor me after school, because for that first quarter, when I'm looking back at it, I didn't really do any math. So they really brought me up to schedule and they really helped me. So it was definitely a disrupt in my education when I left and then came back.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carl, Member Jacobs, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I wanted to second Vice President Holloman's interest in anything this board can do to support students directly, whether there's an idea that's generated tonight, tomorrow, in the future, please, I would appreciate knowing. And I thank you for the report, and I'm looking forward to dig into that. I was looking through the committee composition, just out of curiosity. It appears that the committee's full, but maybe there was a couple terms that have lapsed from looking at the list, right? Is the committee looking for members at this point?
Yeah.
Testing. Thank you, Member Jacobs. This is Paul McDonough. I supervise the Title VI program, so the NAC works closely with our department. I think there's 3 or 4 vacancies plus 2 student terms that are lapsing because they're graduating. So we should have up to 5 vacant positions for the next school year.
Okay.
Madam President, could I follow up?
Yes, you may.
Okay, and so I see that the next meeting is on the 14th of this month. Is anyone who's interested, would a good first step to be attend the meeting and learn more? Or do you have other suggestions for potential members?
I think that potential members can come to our meeting, and it would be a good feel of how the committee run things and what we discuss and everything. If you're interested in the Native Advisory Committee, showing up to a meeting would be a great way to introduce yourself and potentially take part in our yearly elections that we have for the next school year. So, yeah. And
Member Jacobs, the Title VI secretary also serves as the secretary for the NAC, so they can reach out to our department. Our elections meeting is in May. So if they want to get a flavor of how the committee is kind of grouped and the dialogue that goes on next Thursday would be a great chance to join that.
Okay.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Mr. McDonough, can you talk a little bit about the board survey? There's the Board Connect survey that was mentioned. Did I hear that correctly, that there's a survey of some sort in Board Connect?
Madam President, there's we were going to publish the larger report.
Okay.
For the Board Connect as the updates you had requested 5 to 10 minutes.
Yes.
And I met, and it was, we had a long dialogue. So we want to be sure that that information is included to the board as well.
All right. Thank you. All right. And I think I see Member Wilson's hand up.
Yes. I just wanted to say to the NAC committee members, thank you for all of your effort. I know it's a tremendous amount of work, but I appreciate that you have identified ways that the staff could better support students, or will continue to identify ways to do that, but also how peers can support each other. So I really appreciate that you've pointed out possible opportunities to have peers support each other. So I think that's phenomenal.
Absolutely. Okay, not seeing any other hands. We do thank you for your the work that you're doing and will continue to do for yourselves as well as for every kid in the Anchorage School District. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate your report. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. And that brings us to our Student Advisory Board report. And followed by, we will have an item, we will have a third item. Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. Miss Ellie, if you're ready.
Okay, so Student Advisory Board, or SAB, held their latest meeting on Tuesday, March 22nd from 8:15 a.m. to 10:15 a.m. During this meeting, we went over the officer positions that are up for election this next meeting and how SAB members can apply for those positions. We also discussed our school business partnership student representative positions and how to apply for those through our Canvas module. The Spring Alaska Association of School Government, or OSOG, is coming up soon in Kodiak, so reminders were given out about that, as SAB members normally attend to those with their schools. For the school's monthly reports, we allowed a topic of choice to be shared, so hearing what everyone has, like, what everyone wanted to share with the group was really cool to hear. And then we were given the opportunity to attend the student panel, the Zoom meeting, which I personally attended, and I found it very educational to hear from the different candidates about those 9 questions that were asked. And then we had school board member Mr. Carl Jacobs briefly talk about the student nutrition, and we kind of gave him some input and feedback. And finally, we had a resolution brought to us from Polaris K-12 about renaming the athletic facility in honor and in dedication to their Coach Damon, and renaming it to the Coach Damon Athletic Facility, where SAB gave them their full support in continuing this resolution. And our final SAB meeting for the 2021-2022 school year will be held on April 12th, 2022 from 11:15 a.m. to 1:15 p.m. in this boardroom.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Are there any questions for Ms. Shaw? Great report as usual. Thank you, Ms. Shaw. And at this time, I'd like for the board clerk, member Jacobs, to read Teamsters Local 959 request to begin bargaining.
Yes, Madam President, I'm looking at a letter dated March 3rd, 2022, which states, pursuant to the terms of our collective bargaining agreement, kindly accept this as sufficient notification of Teamsters Local Union number 959's desire to keep open the collective bargaining agreement for the purposes of review and or amending all articles, appendices, supplements, addenda, and or letters of understanding of such agreement.
Right. Thank you. And that concludes our reports. We're moving on now to our goal monitoring. Dr. Bishop.
Thank you, Madam President. As it is the first meeting of the month, I am going to share with you the College Career Life Indicator of Attendance Rate. We also have another CCL indicator that I will share at the next meeting. Just general overview to just understand the data captured. And I do want to alert you to some of the data lines and just the living in COVID to kind of share that item. But as you know, we have a back, remember these were built in, 2019 and finalized that Christmas prior to the pandemic. Then they were put off and evaluated last year. And the untold thing and unknown thing was our pandemic, but we're keeping the September 2020 as the base. with that. So as you know, just some background on why the indicator was chosen. There is strong evidence of a relationship between good attendance and doing well in school. And that just provides some background. I wanted to share that just on track, but I'll go into these more deeply with your questions. But the charts look very similar to other charts that we've had, given the size of the N, or the number of students looked at. But as you can see, the 1920 school year, that is just so it may be artificially inflated, because in the spring of 2020, or the last quarter, we defaulted to everyone being present when we went online. And then in 2021 and presently, we had policy to send students and staff and employees home for any kind of symptom for COVID. So we increased these rates. That is one of the reasons why we put PCR testing in our schools so quickly, was because we heard from our staff first, and then our parents with our students saying, wait a minute, we're healthy. We were sent home. I can't, the public was taking too long to get PCR testing back. If you remember, it was taking up to 5 days, so kids would miss all those 5 days till they had the evidence. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to get PCR testing, and to control that timeline. So within 24 hours, we can have kids and or healthy staff members back. So those data are a little bit wonky, and we understand that we operated with a protocol that sent people home.
Right.
And just so you know, the data is as pulled as of 3/29 last week. 2 different years looked at, same demographics breakdown, the change in it, the decrease, as well as the overall change. We also looked at grade level in case there could be some questions in regard to these data. Broke them down, thinking all the different ways the board might like to see the data. And then, of course, the next steps in regard to what we're looking at accomplishing to meet this board goal. And then these are also in our approach, or our theory of change, theory of action of what we do, how we learn from it, and then what we then do. And an account of the implementation stages. Where are we with capturing those ideas at schools, how we're working on those different strategies in the different strata of impact and influence. Wanted to share also that when we talk about school types, what we mean and what they are. So we've listed them: comprehensive elementary schools, and then had very huge outliers for the manner in which they collected the data. And so we're going to combine those. A lot of the individual schools there are really under special schools. So we're going to clean those up for you, but wanted to show openly the data that was not pulled due to the manner in which attendance is, we wanted to control for the manner in which attendance was taken. Mm-hmm. And look forward to your questions. This has been on Destination 2020 prior to this time. United Way as a partner has worked on engagement in school and attendance, and this continues, as we know, to be an indicator of success. And coming to school does matter. Teachers love to have their kids, want engaging classes for their kids, and we know we can teach them when they come. So that's it for now, unless there's any questions.
I can't see in the boardroom,
right,
but
I'll just speak up. Madam President, it's member lessons. I have a question.
Yes.
Yes,
member lessons.
I'll hold most of them for next session, but I've been paying attention to attendance rates this year, and I have noticed that in our data dashboard, we have a much more nuanced, disaggregated data that looks at, it actually separates economically disadvantaged from free and reduced lunch, and I sort of wonder why that is. But gifted students have had a notably higher level of attendance throughout much of the pandemic than students who aren't in that category. And I just wonder whether there's any utility in additional, more specific, we have the more specific data, and I guess this is a question for the board, whether it would be useful to receive more nuanced, disaggregated data. I'm looking at you, but
yeah, certainly it could be, if you'd like. What we do is pool data that we use for schools that schools find useful in their discussions. Many of those other data are used, and Tableau is set up for reports that we have for grants and things like that. So when schools have their leadership meetings and want to discuss their school improvement, we use these data for them. And these are the required subgroups that we always report on that are federally required. So we want the board to have what you will see in any kind of assessment outside of our district. But internally in our district, when we want to answer questions, we do dig deeper. But a lot of times it's for a specific purpose. And so I am not a fan of capturing more data unless there's a use for it. We have so much data. I think we have enough data that we need to answer questions. I don't think we need more data. We just need more time to talk about it and to reflect on it. Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Bishop. Thank you, Member Lessons. Member Lessons, put that, if you want to, all board members, please get your questions in as soon as you can. And if there is we'll follow our request for information process to see if more, to get at information that's not specific to the report. So looks like Member Lessons has given us our first question for next time. And I am looking forward to the questions from the rest of the board as well. So thank you, Dr. Bishop. We are now moving on to our public comment section. And before we start our process, I just need to make a few announcements regarding the process. So this is our first opportunity for this evening for public comment. The board has set aside a 1-hour time slot at the beginning of the meeting for public comment. Comments in excess of 1 hour will be heard at the second opportunity for comment, and that will be at the end of the meeting. Or if you prefer, you can submit your comments in writing. During public comment, board members will not answer questions or engage in discussion with members of the public. This is the public's time to speak and the board's time to listen. The school board welcomes the public to observe and contribute to our meetings through their comments and whether those are written comments or express comments at the meeting. But to be productive, our meetings must be structured and civil. We conduct our meetings under Robert's Rules of Order. As you entered the boardroom, you should have would have been got some guidelines relative to what the decorum is for this space. But in following Robert's Rules of Order, which has been around since the 1800s, those rules require the board and the public to be civil and respectful of each other's opinion. And here are a few requirements under Robert's Rules. Do not attack a member's or a speaker's motives. No profanity or foul language. Refrain from disturbing the meeting, and that amounts to no cheering, applause, outbursts, or waving of signs or posters. If you have handouts that you wish to share with the board, please give them to Ms. Grant, who is seated in the middle of the dais. And she will make sure that the board members get whatever you would like them to have. So as the president of the board, it is my duty to enforce the rules for civility and decorum. As such, I have the authority to rule any speaker out of order for violation of the rules. Further, I will have removed from the meeting anyone who does not heed these rules or fails to conduct themselves in a civil manner. So with that, I'd like to call our first speaker. And that is Karen Gray Levine, or is it Levine? Levine? Sorry, Karen. Please state your name. Welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Karen Gray Levine, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the students and staff of Rogers Park Elementary. We were recently told by our supervisor that we are going to lose 2 staff members. It was explained that although staff allocations are made on the whole population of the school, cuts to staffing are made to the neighborhood program only. Our school is unique in that the highly gifted program is excluded from those cuts because the funding comes from a different source. So neither my principal nor the supervisor of the gifted program could explain why the PTR, or pupil teacher ratio, is not specific to each program. The neighborhood program has already lost 5 staff members in the last 10 years. What that looks like today is a highly gifted K1 class with a little over a dozen students and a neighborhood K1 with 25. What that looks like in the 6th grade are 2 highly gifted 6th grade class, one with 16 and one with 17 students, and the neighborhood 6th grade class at one point with 34. They are currently at 32 in one classroom. To lose 2 more teachers from the neighborhood program will ensure that the average class size is 30 or above. And we know that the neighborhood program has exponentially more students who are not meeting the academic goals that were set right here in this building. And yet we're making those classes larger, including more children with diverse and challenging needs. Creating larger classes where there is greater need is creating a terrible inequity. We asked our supervisor if elementary ed understood that this greater inequity would occur when PTR is done differently with different programs in the same school, and we were told that the administration found this acceptable. The board has made equity a cornerstone of its policies, including your goals and guardrails, where it says that educational opportunities should be equitable for all students in the district. Your recent interviews with superintendent candidates included questions on equity to further show your focus on that issue. The current practice of staff reduction in only one program creates a modern day living, breathing example of separate and unequal in the public education system. So I'm here tonight as the librarian and the teacher for all the kids at Rogers Park to ask you to stand by your words and stand up for the kids. And it's my hope that you will keep those 2 staff positions for the neighborhood program for at least the next year, so that perhaps elementary education can look at changing policies or procedures so that they more reflect the goals and the guardrails of the school board itself and ensures equity for all kids, whether they're attending a neighborhood program or a special program that's funded separately or in a different way. So thank you for listening.
And thank you very much. Next, in person, we have Jennifer Collins. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Jennifer Collins. I want to thank Dr. Bishop and the board members for my opportunity for the testimony today. I live in College Village and my neighborhood school is Rogers Park. I have 2 children at Rogers Park, one in 1st grade in the neighborhood program and one in 4th grade in the highly gifted program. My testimony today is around the pupil to teacher ratio at Rogers Park for the 22-23 school year. It still applies to this year, but as you heard from Ms. Levine, it's changing for next year. My family and I are very concerned that our neighborhood program is losing 2 teachers. With our current student enrollment numbers, this means class sizes will be 27 to 32 students in every classroom of the neighborhood program with multiple grade combination classrooms. This is a direct result of the way that the PTR is calculated across the dual programs in our school. Currently, HG has about 17 students in each classroom and neighborhood averages 25. For the 22-23 school year, the gifted program is not slated to lose any teachers, while the neighborhood is slated to lose 2. Students in the gifted program will still have class sizes of around 17 students, while the neighborhood will increase to 27 to 32 students per class. This inequity in classroom size is because the Anchorage School District uses a formula based on the total number of students enrolled in both programs. However, if we lose teachers, this only results in teacher cuts from the neighborhood program because the HG program has different funding sources. There is no secondary formula that is applied when calculating the PTR. To simplify, HG neighborhood programs are counted as one for the PTR, but the cuts are not applied to both programs. How is this equitable to our students on the neighborhood side? I urge you to look at the formulas for determining the PTR for schools with dual programs. Each program should be looked at separately to ensure equity for all students. Reinstating our 2 teachers at Rogers Park will result in about 24 neighborhood students per class instead of 27 to 32. I'm not a teacher myself, but I have been told by teachers that one of the most difficult aspects of large classroom sizes is trying to address behavior problems that would not be occurring in a smaller class. Teachers become more focused on behavior rather than the actual lessons. There is also less mobility in the classroom, along with less opportunity to meet with students one-on-one or even in small groups. In these larger classrooms, teachers are being pulled in multiple directions and students are falling through the cracks. Combined classrooms also come with additional challenges since teachers are required to teach 2 different grade levels of curriculum. That is double the planning and double the instruction in the same amount of time as just one grade level. And if these split classrooms contain 27 to 32 students, we are asking teachers to fulfill 2 teaching roles. This creates difficulty in answering student questions or providing help for students. Combination classes create gaps in learning regardless of the age. I'd also like to point out that this is occurring across all of our dual programs in the district. However, the effects are especially impactful at Rogers Park due to the difficulty in moving students and teachers across the 2 programs. Again, I urge you and the leadership in elementary education to reevaluate the reasons that these elementary.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next, we have Sarah Nicholson. Welcome, Sarah. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, board members. My name is Sarah Nicholson. I've been a teacher at Rogers Park Elementary for 20 years. My colleagues and I are extremely concerned that our neighborhood program is losing 2 teachers next year. Our current student enrollment numbers mean class sizes between 27 and 32 students with multiple combination classrooms. I understand that this is because Rogers Park is a dual program school. We house the highly gifted program funded through gifted money and the neighborhood program funded from the General Education Fund. When allocating teachers to a building, the Anchorage School District uses a formula based on the total number of students enrolled in both programs. However, if we lose teachers, this always results in teacher cuts from the neighborhood program. Currently, highly gifted has about 17 students in each classroom. These numbers have negatively impacted our pupil-teacher ratio, resulting in the loss of only neighborhood teachers. For the 2022-2023 school year, the gifted program is not slated to lose any teachers, while the neighborhood is slated to lose 2. Students in the gifted program will have class sizes of about 17 students per class, while the neighborhood will have between 27 and 32 students per class. How is this equitable? Especially when 100% of HG students meet Anchorage School District benchmark targets and less than half of our neighborhood students meet those targets. We have seen the equity image of all students being able to look over a fence to watch a game. These cuts mean that the neighborhood students will be peeking through the slats at the bottom of the fence. In contrast, the HG students will clearly see right over it. How does this make sense for a school board that believes in equity for all students? We urge you to please look at the formulas for determining the pupil-teacher ratio for schools with dual programs. Each program should be looked at separately to ensure equity for all students. Reinstating our 2 teachers will make our classes more equitable, with about 24 neighborhood students per class instead of 30. Thank you for taking the time to consider our request.
Thank you. Next, we have Therese Hopes. Telephone.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Teresa Holtz, and I'm the nurse at Rogers Park Elementary. I know you've heard from me a few times this year as a school nurse in regards to masking and contact tracing, and I truly appreciate your thought and attention to those matters. This time, however, I'm here as a concerned parent. My youngest son is in 5th grade this year at Rogers Park, which is a K-6 neighborhood school, as well as a school that houses the highly gifted program. Working at Rogers Park, I already see a disparity in numbers between the neighborhood side and the highly gifted side. For example, our neighborhood 6th grade class has 34 students enrolled this year. Our highly gifted sixth grade classes each have 18 students. Our kindergarten neighborhood school this year has 27 students, 27 kindergartners, whereas our highly gifted program has a combo class of K-1 students with about 14 total. The numbers between the programs have always been this way, which I never questioned, despite seeing how much more individual attention is given to the gifted students. But I recently learned that the staffing for our school is determined by counting all of the staff and students in both programs, with only neighborhood staff being displaced due to a separate funding source. That means that if we have 10 kids in the entire gifted program and 1,000 kids in the neighborhood program, but staff positions had to be cut, the cuts would still come from the neighborhood side. In the past 10 years, Rogers Park has lost 5 classroom teachers and the gifted program has lost 0. We were just informed this year that we would be losing 2 more teachers from the neighborhood program next year, resulting in losing 7 teachers in 11 years. I do understand that enrollment is lower than it was in the past, but I also cannot stress how inherently wrong it is to count the numbers at our school to include the highly gifted staff with the neighborhood program numbers of students, resulting in packed neighborhood classrooms. The school district states that they believe in and support equity for all students, but as I am now facing having my son in an overcrowded 6th grade or a 5-6 combo, which is not recommended due to a complete difference in curriculum, I am finally realizing how little sense it makes to continue to remove classroom teachers from our neighborhood program. I propose that the numbers of students and staff for each program be counted individually so that proper classroom sizes are achieved, resulting in a fair and equitable experience for all students within our shared walls. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Next, we have Kaya Kaltenborn. Kaya, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. My name is Kaya Kaltenborn. I've been a classroom teacher in the Anchorage School District for 21 years. I'm also a National Board Certified teacher. I've been in elementary classrooms across the ASD in both Mount Spur and Naka Valley, Inlet View, and now at Rogers Park. I was excited when we moved to the neighborhood and then I could fully use my teaching philosophy and be in the neighborhood and teach in the neighborhood that I then planned to send my own kids to once I had them. Now I have 2 kids in the neighborhood program at Rogers Park Elementary, where I am the 6th grade teacher that's been mentioned. In order to maintain high and rigorous standards while providing that quality education, I urge you to once again look more deeply at the elementary teaching positions being cut. According to Appendix G of the budget book, 50% of the positions being cut are from schools that host dual programs, which account for only 1/3 of our elementary schools. This calculation was made using the exact numbers listed in Appendix G with cross-reference to the elementary programs listed as elementary, elementary alternative, qualification, and world language that are on our public website, our ASD website. As you've heard, within dual programs, there's no secondary formula that is applied when calculating for the PTR. To clarify, the 2 programs' populations hosted within a school are counted as one. However, the cuts are not applied to both programs equally or equitably. Our common thread amongst these cuts is the inequitable access to education felt by our neighborhood families and kids. The same kids and families that depend on their neighborhood school for the close location, guaranteed transportation, after-school care, food, mental health services, and a decent public education. The paradox then is that any attempt to right the ship seems like the fault of the dual program, of which it is not. It's our system, our formula. This PTR calculation is an inequitable practice that is based on a flawed calculation that can be fixed this year. The formula is not the siphoning of money or resources from one program to another, but it is disproportionately siphoning resources out of our neighborhood programs. Upon further digging, it is also apparent that the students in alternative programs are often meeting or exceeding the goals adopted by the board. And also we're also not able to see the full scope of progress or diversity for that matter of our dual programs. The data dashboard does not systematically distinguish between dual programs within schools, and yet there are quite a few ways that we can look at the data among division, school, grade, and ethnicity for map testing. We can, in the data dashboard, distinguish now the FastBridge testings for K2 and distinguish them between the open optional programs. However, we're not able to then look at our other dual programs like world language and the highly gifted as well. So nevertheless, families who are fighting to keep their kids in schools that represent their community, that work for them, are being put at disadvantage. Our neighborhood schools are not failing. We're just being forgotten.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And next we have in person, Rebecca, is it Noblin? Welcome, Rebecca. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Rebecca Noblin, and good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. I am the mother of 2 kids who go to Rogers Park. I have one in the gifted program and one in the neighborhood program. And my comments are basically a repeat of what the concerned parents and teachers have already said tonight. I just like to express my concern at the inequity and point out that it's not just an inequity between the gifted program and the neighborhood program, but between the Rogers Park neighborhood program and other neighborhood programs, other ASD classrooms throughout the city. The numbers at Rogers Park don't match what the formula is intended to provide for the school. I hope you all will consider changing this formula to make it more equitable for our neighborhood kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is the end. Katie, do you have anyone signed up in the boardroom?
There were no additional names added, no.
Madam President, this is Dave Donnelly.
Yes, Member Donnelly. We're finishing up public comment right now.
Yeah, I have a motion. I move and ask unanimous consent to suspend the rules to provide 5 minutes for the superintendent to address the issues that were just raised regarding the PTR calculation at Rogers Park.
Second. Madam President, go ahead.
I'll second.
Was there a second?
Yeah, Madam President, this is Member Jacobs. I'll second.
Okay, moved in second to allow the superintendent to speak to the issues just raised. This is not within our usual procedure, but we have a motion and a second. What's the will of the body? Katie? The motion is to suspend the rules.
Would you like me to do a roll call?
Yes, please.
Member Jacobs?
Yes.
Member Donnelly?
Yes.
Member Lessons?
Yes.
Member Wilson?
Yes.
Member Holloman?
Yes.
President Bellamy?
Yes. Sounds like that was 6 to. So the motion passes. So now, Dr. Bishop.
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. I would like to acknowledge that the issues are real, and they are real. I had put it in the Board Connect that as we have schools with specialized programs, they lose flexibility in their staffing. And so, as you know, there is so much money in the pot, if you will. And so, I appreciate not wanting to poke out what the 5th, 6th grade teacher shared, is that you don't want to make another program in your school be the problem for your program. But so I would concur that overall in our district, by having so many specialized programs like immersion, and highly gifted, this is all general fund money. Highly gifted money is general fund money. It is just dispersed by a different director, but it is general fund. There isn't a grant or any other money. So general fund does cover highly gifted. When those classes are technically protected because of the number of students in them or the staffing, the burden of all of the students who enter, the transitions of students in and out, go to the other side. And it does become a problem as students matriculate. It becomes more. So high schools even have this even more in middle schools, because generally, if you take the immersion program, we start with a large number of kindergarten, but as people move or exit the program, it is difficult to put a student in a specialized program in 5th grade. It rarely happens. It happened, I think, in the German program because the person moved from Germany. So the person actually was ahead. For Rogers Park right now, we don't know all the students that are going to attend, even on the gifted side, because testing occurs all the time. And so I believe that the director assigned staffing. It's general fund money, but a director of gifted assigns the staffing to that school in regard to the gifted side of the house, if you will. Students are still entering it. We don't know the final, but therein lie that every year we have this, just so you know, we have 20 holdbacks, and just so you know, the process isn't over. So there's probably 20 schools, as they said, that have the same concern. And what the staffing is that we hold holdbacks, and where students, it's very disruptive, but where we have positions that are already paid for in our budget that we haven't assigned to schools, because this is the issue that's going to happen. You have to wait to see where students show up, because we're right on the edge of our staffing. When they show up in those classrooms, we assign additional staff to them. Probably 95% of the holdback teachers are going to be put in specialized program, because of we have so many specialized programs in neighborhood schools, which is a great thing to have. We love it. It's just that the manner in which schools are staffed by PTR strains that. Not so much at the elementary level, the primary, but as students, for the majority of them, as students get older, it is straining. If you recall, board members, we did make a change at Turnagain about 4 years ago, and we put 34 people in the immersion class, and then the immersion teachers and parents came out and testified. There is a real issue in regard to the staffing. Now, if I could just make up a budget and say, give it, yeah, it's needed. I wish we could do that all the time, but you only have a set of funds that you have to distribute. This process isn't over. And it is happening at 19 other schools, and the other 19 schools are basically, they've been in contact with their supervisors, and their supervisors are just, hold on, we need to know where the students show up. About every year, we move about 10 to 15 people. Teachers are moved to where students enroll. And for the people who are closest to this, Dr. Stock and Dan, this happens, and I'd like, if you would like more detail in regard to what the process will look like from here on. As you heard from public testimony, it's disruptive. It's highly disruptive. But without the testimony is real. If you take from somewhere else, then you cause another problem. And they said it's just the funding formula in general. We can adjust the funding formula and separate all specialized programs from all neighborhood. And I don't think the issues are going to go away. They're just going to be from another side. So we're toying with that, though, because every year it is the neighborhood side of schools that seemingly get the higher classes, the more combo classes, than others. And the question would be, well, then do we not have specialized things? And I think our community would say no. I think our teachers would say no, because a lot of our teachers are in these, teaching in them. So it is a problem we deal with. That's why we hold back and don't assign 20 positions in elementary, so we can figure it out. But again, it's a disruptive process, because we're so tight, we have to know where the students enroll. And they're still enrolling right now. And I would ask, perhaps Dr. Stock wanted Dan Barker, who was a principal of Rogers Park, to come forward. He probably has the most experience as being a principal of that school as well. But we've all identified that it is a problem, but we also identified that right now the process is only in the middle of the process.
You can hear me? Yes. Okay. I'm happy to answer as many questions as anyone wants about that process. To start with, just to talk about the numbers as they currently exist at Rogers Park. Rogers Park, as of the 4th of March, had 410 students
both programs. Of those students, 261 of them are neighborhood, coming from the geographic area associated with Rogers Park. 149 of them are highly gifted, coming throughout the entire Anchorage area. Now, Rogers Park currently has 20 certificated staff that are assigned classroom responsibilities. As we split those up, right now, Rogers Park, quite frankly, like many of our schools, is slightly overstaffed. They're overstaffed because when we returned from the pandemic, we had no idea exactly how many students were going to show up. We staffed based on our best guess, and we went forward with the philosophy that it was a really challenging year for everyone, so we were not going to pull staff back unless we needed them in another location. We already owed these folks jobs. We already had them in place. We weren't going to pull them back. Because of that, Rogers Park currently has been running, for example, in the neighborhood program, 261 students divided by 27. We use 27 when we talk about elementary because it falls in the middle of the continuum, with a low side from kindergarten, which would be over here down in the 19 range, a high side of 6th grade that could go up into the low 30s, although we try not to do that. So 27 gets us towards the middle. We give the allocation when we make a determination at this point based on what our demographer tells us expects to show up in that school next year. That's with the knowledge that we might have to make an adjustment. This body knows, as Dr. Bishop referenced, in past practice, we have moved multiple staff from one site to the other, particularly to offset high primary numbers. So if indeed Rogers Park shows up with a kindergarten classroom that starts at 28 or 29, that's not something we're going to start with. We're going to adjust staff if we have to there. But until those folks actually come through the door, we don't have a real good identity of where they're going to show up. Until they do, we don't know. That number's a little easier to predict with the HG program. Many of those folks have already registered, but still, again, coming off of a pandemic with a large backlog of testing, we can't understaff them until we see who shows up. Rogers Park is also a qualification program, so a child can qualify for that program at any time during the year, and we would never tell them you can't come. This goes back into historical experience for Rogers Park. In past years, they've had HG programs that continue to grow and grow and grow as students qualify. So our demographer gives us a bit of an idea of what we think. They project us next year at Rogers Park of having approximately 413 students. 413 students, this is both programs now, would equate to Rogers Park sitting at about 19 teachers. That would be 10 in the neighborhood side, 9 on the HG side. HG was able to staff specifically for 9. We're looking at 10, which is part of the reduction that we're talking about. However, if those students show up and those class numbers, particularly in primary, exceed, you will see myself back here, as I have before this board before, talking with the superintendent and the board about here are some last minute moves we have to make. This is an uncomfortable thing for us to do with teachers usually because they've already met classes and families have already started to connect with them. Still, we do it to offset when necessary. Our numbers for Rogers Park are a guess, like our demographers' numbers always are. But in the last several years, our demographers have been incredibly accurate. We've had very few deviations from that where we had to make big changes. I would further point out that there was some commentary about how much Rogers Park has reduced in the past, and I would agree with that. 7 years ago, I was a principal at Rogers Park. When I was a principal at Rogers Park, our number for the building was in the neighborhood of 570 students. Rogers Park now, again, is talking about a projection of 413. There's no way you're going to reduce over 100 students out of a building and not pull the staff out also, either to move to where those students are or just as a responsible fiduciary to make sure we're appropriately staffed. And I would answer any questions about that if anyone has them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barker. I think Member Jacobs has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. So I think I heard, if I understood the process, that the highly gifted director makes the initial assignment of teachers to the highly gifted program and not the principal?
So yes and no. As you heard Dr. Bishop talk about, the whole gifted envelope for the whole district will get some portion of general funding. Then it falls to the highly gifted director to determine which of those staff are spent specifically in HG, which are specifically spent in HG at a certain level, and which go into the Ignite or other support functions around our gifted students. So those are 2 or 3 different tasks that all fund into the same envelope of his FTE. He will then have to make an initial assignment for Rogers Park, which is where that comes from. He'll make a determination based on the testing that he has and what he believes his future testing will produce to make that as stable as possible. Because again, once we get into the year, those kids will be able to test all year. And because it's a qualification program, it's not like an immersion program or some of the programs where we could say, okay, stop, we've reached our cap. When these folks qualify for the program, they automatically get in. So he'll want to leave himself a little bit of room, but that's essentially how it works. It is much more problematic for Rogers Park, I would say, which again has been some historical practice, if those HG numbers start rolling in really heavy in the December, January, February range, because then you've got a full remainder of the year with only poor options. One would be to heavily stack an HG class way over the 30s as the kids just keep coming in. Another would be to try and pull a staff member off, which is probably going to mean that you're going to have to split up a class or break up a connection between a group of kids and a teacher. The options are not as good once the year has started.
Madam President, could I follow up?
Sure.
And I probably will ask to speak with you offline just to make sure I want to learn more about this. So, but the staff that are assigned out of the general envelope to by the highly gifted director, is it the same pool of teachers that is assigned by the district that the principal oversees, or are there two separate workforces?
So great question. The principal supervises all instructional staff on their site. So yes, that's a supervisory position, but it's assigned by HG. There is a separate qualification to teach in that program. So those are slightly different staff members. It would technically be possible for us to move from one to the other, but HG students fall into a very specific category, and it is very helpful to have teachers who have advanced understanding of highly gifted learning.
Yeah, and I think that's just I'm trying to wrap my mind around why principals aren't assigning all staff in their building instead of the highly gifted director.
So just as a clarification, technically that is what happens. The HG director, same as my elementary director on the neighborhood side, would give a set number. The principal would then determine where across the 6-7 grades those fall out. They would make the determination of, I'm going to put more of them on the primary side because I don't want this number to be over 16, and I'm going to allow this side to get a little larger. Or if for some reason they ended up needing to do a combination class, which is particularly worthy of avoiding, and that much more so in specialized areas like this, they would be determining where that was. So the principal's making the specific assignment. The HG director gave them a staffing number that it's then up to the principal to spread over their building to meet the community needs.
Okay, and I think Member Lessons, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I actually have two. And one is really a question about the status of the highly gifted testing. When I looked at the data dashboard earlier today, and I lost my notes somewhere, it did look like K1, 2, and maybe 3 were significantly smaller than 4, 5, 6. And the question in my mind is, has that testing of our younger learners fallen behind because of the pandemic? And if so, does the district expect that number to catch up? Or is that going to be like a long-term consequence in your crystal ball from COVID? And if the HG enrollment is down, then I'm still scratching my head about why the neighborhood school is bearing that.
So like everything with regard to education, there are about 8 questions and answers inside what you just asked. So generally speaking, yes, I'll answer the ones that are softballs. Testing is way down coming off of the pandemic. Now, part of that is the backlog of what would have been created in the pandemic. But part of it also has to do even with just identification, because oftentimes if parents are working with their own child, they don't see them in context with other children, and it takes a while for that to spark the, wait a minute, it's kind of unusual that Kelly sees this way when everybody else sees it a different way. So that is a process that always is a little delayed, but the pandemic shut it down cold. So I think I'm not working specifically in gifted, but I think if you were to ask Mr. Lubchich, he would tell you that there's a backlog of some testing, and there's a big unknown as to how much will keep coming, right? Because we were really clear about those type of services being shut down. As we continue to outreach about that, we have parents that are coming to us and saying, so then another portion of the way we identify those kiddos is by teachers also having that experience with them. So again, that's where the pandemic works against us. So you had testers not being able to get into individualized testing environments with students. You had a reduction of their environmental exposure to other students. You had a reduction of opportunity for access. All those things come together to have said there's a bubble there. We just don't know how long it will go and how much. Even in a non-COVID year, though, the numbers you're talking about would be very normal for Rogers Park to start very, very low in those primaries. And again, there are multiple factors for that. In some cases, it used to be that we didn't even initiate some of our Ignite type testing until second grade. So you already had a group of kids that had to be an outlier in a way for someone to attract that attention to them. We've done away with some of those gatekeeper kind of positions, but you still are talking about a scenario that leverages someone's experience with a child, and it doesn't always jump right out super fast. And in fact, sometimes the behaviors associated with those kiddos make it a little bit harder to put the exact nail on. Here's what I think might be going on. So that all comes together for us to say that we don't always have super clear numbers about what it's going to look like. And I would say it's even more likely now. Other factors that impact that is you can have a family who has a very comfortable experience with the school that they're currently at. They have 2 or 3 other kids at that school. They love that school. They've been there wherever. They choose not to participate in the program, even if they qualify. So testing results don't always necessarily associate with that. All of that goes together to make it a slower piece that moves forward. Oftentimes, parents also find that for K1, 2, or even 3, I'm okay with my highly gifted kiddo doing the same thing everybody else has. It's not until I got a little bit farther along and I started running into people who are really struggling on the right way to help them understand their specific way of seeing the world, really. And so I don't believe it's unusual for those numbers to be larger in the secondary part of the elementary program.
Thank you for that complex response to a series of embedded questions. I do have another follow-up. I looked in our policy manual about pupil to teacher ratio, and the only thing that came up it's an AR that refers to lottery procedures, which Rogers Park is not a lottery school. It's like the ugly duckling or the stepchild or the something.
Wow.
So my question,
Madam, I would like to.
I mean, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say
that. I really think
that,
I'm
sure we have people back here.
we're talking about schools that we care about.
Okay, I apologize. I was up too early this morning. So I sincerely apologize. I think what I mean is that it doesn't fit the mold of what of how this AR may have been drafted. And so
actually the PTR is really, and the funding is driven by the budget.
Right. I guess I was just going to read it, which says that, and again, it's this AR 5116. And says grade level and individual classroom enrollments must be balanced within the program and school. And so that seems like a really great intent and directive for the dual program schools, but it doesn't seem to allow for that same intent to apply to.
I believe it is. I mean, that when you have a principal assigning, you're using, it's such a complex problem that you're trying to balance it. Balancing means trying your best to get your littles with fewer, because K1, when you're just teaching them how to be a student and they're just coming to school, the goal is to keep those classrooms lower. That's balancing the work. So balancing isn't necessarily a number that you pinpoint. Balancing is understanding that you're trying to, when staffing a school, balance those needs. And so I would challenge that with balance, actually, and it's very complex. But overall, we have a lot of specialized program that takes staff. I mean, we see that. This occurs every single year. And your dual multi-grade classrooms are usually on the side that isn't the specialized program. And I want to also make a point that when 3 years ago, prior to the pandemic, actually it was in 2020, for 2021, I had made a very distinct move to utilize staff differently, to use 42 teachers in classrooms, give them back to schools so that they can choose how to utilize that staff. And someone else came that was from a specialized program, a special, not a classroom teacher. And the board, the last thing they heard was that, so they took it back. So we have created time and time again, because we don't have all the resources of the last person we hear. I mean, I honestly did a 6 months working with people to figure this out with our librarians, with the librarians were going to take an extra 15 minutes with kids to allow another staff member to be assigned to a school for whatever that school wanted. And they could have put it back in specials if they wanted, or, Willowa, utilized it differently. We allowed some things to go, but it was really if you want to put it back in a classroom teacher, do it. But we tried to give more flexibility back to the schools, and that too was overturned by the school board. So I understand the problem. Yeah.
I would add one piece that it makes Rogers Park not different from all of our schools, but a little bit different than probably what may have been being referenced in the AR that you're referring to. Rogers Park is a true qualification school, and a qualification school runs very differently than a school where we elect out of some version of volunteerism, whether the family or the student or whoever, to participate. It is a very different thing to set a cap on a program where people voluntarily choose to participate than it is to set a cap on something that you qualify to get into, because that's a two-edged sword. You got to qualify to get in, but once you have qualified to get in, we have to provide that service no matter how many qualify. And that's a very different thing. It's still, to Dr. Bishop's point, is absolutely about the balancing and making it all work out. But one of them, you can literally at some point turn the faucet closed. The other, you never can if you're following your methodology.
Okay. Madam President, I would just like to say that these discussions are going to become ever more difficult when our ESSER money goes away. There has to be, and for lack of a better word, I've just been using this word, like a value proposition. Like, what do we want that experience to be? But I am going to say, yes, the testimony that it is different, that it is not all the same, is absolutely true. But it is a system that we have set up for a long time that we continue to try to impact. But in order to impact it, things have to change, and people don't really like change. And so I just encourage that we gather the information, because the problem that was described tonight is a real problem, and it occurs at half of the schools in the district.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. And what I'd like to do is look for an update. Well, right now the process is not complete. So we are in the middle of a process. And I would like maybe an update in, if not this week's Board Connect, the next week Board Connect. If there is an update to anything tonight relative to this discussion. Okay, with that, I'm going to move us along. Thank you, Mr. Barker. Thank you, Dr. Bishop.
Thank you.
I would like to remind the public that written public testimony is connected to the agenda if you would like to see that. That brings us to item E, which is our consent agenda.
Madam President, I'd like to move we approve the consent agenda as listed on the main agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Madam President, I'd like to pull the personnel report, item 097.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam President, if you could just give me one moment to get that pulled off, please.
Okay. And in pulling that, we added under action. So we are now voting on the consent agenda items 090, 095, and 106. Whenever you're ready, Kate.
All right, thank you. Member Wilson.
Yes.
Member Jacobs.
Yes.
Member Holloman.
Yes.
Member Donnelly.
Yes.
Member Lessons.
Yes.
President Bellamy.
Yes. And the consent agenda items 090, 095, and 106 pass that motion passes.
Madam President, this is Member Donnelly.
Yes.
Can we have a 5-minute recess?
Sure.
Thank you I appreciate it.
Yeah, we can do that right before we go to the to our next section. The time is now. So let's come back at 8:31. 8:31. I'd like to welcome everybody back. Okay, I don't see Dr. Oh, is that Dr. Bishop? Yeah, that's Dr. Bishop. I see her. All board members in the boardroom are present. All board members online. All right, thank you. We are now at item F. Member Holloman.
Yes, thank you.
Holloman.
For members that may not be aware, I was going to say April 1st is kind of a special day, but I'll say midnight on March 31st is a special day. Certificated personnel that know they're leaving in the fall can give notice to the district and assure themselves of health coverage. I wanted to ask our HR director if this personnel report is current through April 1st, and I realize it may not be. I don't know what the cutoff date is normally for getting in the report, but I wanted to find out what the cutoff on this report was, just in terms of knowing, getting an idea of what we're looking at from people that are leaving this summer.
Thank you. Dr. Bishop.
Madam President, I believe that this needs to be read into action before we can discuss.
You are absolutely correct. Will you make a motion, Mr. Holloman, and we'll get a second? Sorry about that.
Yes, my apologies. I would like to move acceptance of item 097, the personnel report.
All right. Move in second to accept memorandum number 097, the personnel report. And now we can have our discussion. Dr. Bishop.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to defer to the Chief Human Resource Officer, Matt Tieford.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. Through the President, to Member Holloman, this would not, Member Holloman, capture all of the resignation retirements up through the 31st. There is some, and I don't know the exact number of days. Perhaps the board secretary could refresh my memory about when this report would have been submitted, but it's been some number of days ago. They've continued, they being the resignations and retirements notices have continued to come in, as you mentioned, through the 31st.
Okay. I appreciate that, and I can understand that it's not up to the month. Do you have a sense of whether or not people are leaving at a higher rate than normal, or are we seeing about same activity as usual?
Again, through the President, Member Holloman, we do think we're experiencing a slightly higher rate. I've asked the talent management team, now that we are past the first of the month, to do a report, which I can provide through Board Connect to this board as soon as possible. We haven't captured all of the notices of resignation through the 31st. I don't think it's any sort of a sea change. We may experience probably in the higher range of what we experience as a range anyway across. If you look at a 5-year window, you might see a couple dozen, 3 or 4 dozen number of differences in retirement resignations around this time. I think we're within that range, probably on the high end number, but nothing dramatic that we can see.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions on memorandum 097?
Madam President, this is Member Lessons. I have my hand up.
Okay.
This is a follow-up question, and that is, are any particular areas more impacted than others? Principals versus teachers versus nurses versus other staff classifications?
Through the Board President, to Member Lessons, we're tracking in particular, as Member Holloman mentioned, at this time of year, the certificated resignations, the teacher resignations, because of the incentive to provide that notice at the end of March. And by the way, that following the most recent negotiation, that deadline will move up to January next year. But we do continue to experience resignations across bargaining units. We see a spike though, and it's reflected in the personnel report for the EEA positions around this time of year.
Okay. Other questions? I can't see the room, so you'll have to speak up or wave. I can see the room now. Thank you. All right, not seeing any more questions. The motion is to approve memorandum number 097. Katie, whenever you're ready.
Member Donnelly?
Yes.
Member Wilson?
Yes.
Member Jacobs?
Yes.
Member Lessons?
Yes.
Member Holloman?
Yes.
President Bellamy?
Yes. And that motion passes. Thank you. Next on our agenda is item G, and those are non-action items that will be back before you next week. Are there any individuals signed up for public, Katie?
No additional people signed up.
No additional? Okay, thank you. And that brings us to the superintendent update.
Thank you, Madam President. I did wanted to brief the board on the suspension of the AK STAR assessment. I had just made that call last week. I wanted you to know that the window had just opened up. ASD was about the only district in the state that I think uses the whole entire window simply because of the volume of students that we have and utilizing the technology. And what we discovered early on was the students that we discovered this because our teachers and other proctors assisted us in sharing the children's experience with it. And essentially, this test this year we found out is really a one-time delivery of this type of test, because in the future, and the reason why I think NWA has strength is that it would be embedded in MAP growth, a test that kids are used to. But for this 1 year in meeting the deadline, it is a separate administration. And what happened is that a child would sit down for the reading part, but the reading part had 2 sections. And our young kids, and actually some older ones as well, when they came to the end of the first part, they had to submit and stop the test and end. And what was happening is the buttons at the bottom weren't very clear. There wasn't a stop, go get your teacher or anything. So they continued on in the test. Then they would figure out that they continued on and then hit through and then hit submit. Lots of different things occurred. They couldn't get back on the test in the same time. It would skip ahead. We were afraid that, they might not have known. They might have just skipped right through. And in some cases, when the proctors caught it, we asked parents if they just wanted them to continue, like to test for a long time. And some of them said, no, get out. Some of them said, yes, go ahead and let them if they're okay with it. So we were the first to alert the testing company. We've been in contact with DEED and the testing script writers, and they are making some changes. They have not changed them yet. We want the data associated with the students who had been affected. We want to approve the changes to signal to students that they are finished and the instructions that would go therein. So we look to restart, but once we're satisfied with the corrections at the state level, then we will, it'll take 2 days to communicate. We want to be sure our teachers, who are generally our proctors, feel comfortable and confident in knowing what they should do to be able to work through this issue. We were told it is a 1-year issue because as they move forward, with more time, they can embed a criterion reference test into the MAP growth, which is very dynamic, which gives outside of grade level questions. And your end of the year test by federal requirements has to test grade level equivalent information. So essentially, if, our MAP growth, we tell you if you could be in 2nd grade and be doing 6th grade kind of questions.
these new assessments, they're going to have to embed second grade questions or third grade questions, if you will, into that assessment. And so they're trying to, work through the AI to figure all that out. But we did stumble. Instead of having our staff and students frustrated, we just paused it, and we'll update the board when we roll back again. We think it is doable to fix, but again, didn't want another child or teacher spending time on something that isn't going to be valuable in the end. And if you have any questions, I can answer them the best I can.
Okay, I can't see the room. Are there any questions in the room?
Madam President, I had a quick question, well, a comment and a question. The comment was just to share, I received positive feedback from educators saying that they appreciated that you made that judgment call.
Good.
So I just wanted to relay that. My second question, I'm thinking back to what I think I recall from earlier this year, and that is in an effort to focus on really the core reading and math proficiency, science was and social studies were put on the back burner, like grade in elementary school. Grades maybe weren't required for a quarter or maybe the whole year. I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but I did notice that the science tests were moving forward. So could you speak a little bit to what we think? I guess I don't understand whether the science tests are a federally required test or state required test, and what we think we might get out of, at least in the elementary school, when science maybe wasn't front loaded in our classrooms as it would have been in a normal year.
Yeah, that's a great question. And they are federally required tests that our state runs. And it is a different testing company than NWA. And that can continue. And we did and continue to want our teachers to focus on, access skills. The test is, I believe, 5th grade, 8th grade, 5th and 8th and 10th grade. So with our students, I think our teachers in our upper grade levels are doing more science than the lower grades. But it is acceptable, even in a year that is more regular, for teachers to, I'm going to teach social studies for one quarter, science for another. So that practice is actually acceptable, even in a year that we aren't testing or don't have a pandemic. So we'll find out from the assessment what that looks like. But for future years in access to be able to learn science and social studies on your own, it was evident that students that miss access skills, we wanted to be sure that they had those. Yeah, but generally doesn't affect the older grade levels too much. But your point that it could in future years that we want to catch up on those as well.
Okay.
But that
Any other
needs to be a DRC company, not NWA. So that was just my update. I wanted to share that, and thank you. I'll send out a notice to the board letting you know when we have a restart date. As the window is 5 more weeks, we weren't too worried about it.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bishop. Okay, not seeing any hands. All right, so we will continue on to item J, and that's our school board and administration comments and whatever communications we may have. So we'll start with the school board. I'll start with in the boardroom with members. I'll just do a round robin. Member Lessons, John Wheat, and then Jacobs.
Madam President, could we ask questions of the superintendent first? May we have?
I did ask if there were any more questions.
I just had one question of something I wanted to bring up under questions.
This is under her report. Is that what you're? Yes. So I did ask for questions under her report. You may go on.
Thank you for the indulgence. Thank you. Madam Superintendent, we got some emails from parents about the ASD maintaining a database indicating preferred pronouns for students that allegedly is not available to parents. Can you enlighten us on that issue?
Sure, I can offer that. I believe either Dr. Stock or Mike Fleckenstein. Did we put this in the Board Connect, the information? No?
No. I've not heard of it until tonight. So I don't know. I heard what Member Donnelly said.
Yeah. Do we have a comment on the question?
Well, through the president to Member Donnelly, I think what you're referring to is there'd been a little training program that our counselors had done when there was a change in the software driven by a vendor, not us, but there was some options that they had with regards to the student information program that allowed them to put nicknames. And then they also, because of this push across the U.S., added a little tab in Q that could allow the principal or the counselor to put a pronoun at the wishes of the student. And there's a form that they created where individuals have to request those. That's the extent of my knowledge about it, that it was driven by a change in the software, and then the counselors getting together and talking about how best to handle that option. So any other questions? I know our secondary folks could do a report in Board Connect and have that more thoroughly explained, but that's the extent of my knowledge.
Yeah, that'd be great if they could do that. And the specific issue is parental access to the information about their own children.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for the superintendent? We are moving on now to board and administrative comments. Members Lessons, Donnelly, and Jacobs in the boardroom. Your comments.
Sure. I'll just share what a joy it was to go to Golden View about 2 weeks ago and listen to students demonstrate their mastery of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and their knowledge of the Founding Fathers and apply it to a colony on Mars. And it was a joy to throw out softball and hardball questions and curveball questions to them alongside other board members and some really wonderful, brilliant members of our community. It was a lot of fun and I was very impressed.
Thank you. Member Donnelly.
Last meeting, when I stated my opinion that Vladimir Putin is a war criminal, I did not know President Biden would agree with me the very next day. I just wanted to say 5 of the many things I love about the United States, and they include belief in citizenship and equality, a work ethic, rewarding talent, forgiveness, and freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Donnelly. Member Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a brief note of appreciation for those who came to testify tonight. As always, I respect those taking time out of their evenings to do so. Upcoming meetings between now and our next regularly scheduled board meeting on the 12th, we have our communications and governance committee meetings scheduled at this point. And then I think the SAB is that day as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, members online, let's go with Wilson and Holloman.
This year marked 50 years of ASD's participating in Youth Art Month. Youth Art Month artwork was displayed at the Anchorage Museum, the Fifth Avenue Mall, Midtown Mall, Muldoon Library, Lusac Library, and Eagle River Chugiak Library. There were over 800 pieces of artwork, including special works like banners, painted bear-proof trash cans, and lumineers. Over 1,100 students participated in this year's showcase. Gold and silver key scholastic winners from ASD participated in this year's showcase. Also on display at the Anchorage Museum was part of the Youth Art Month. For the 50th year anniversary, they showcased alumni work dating back to 1996 in a special day at the museum. And so I wanted to say thank you to the Fine Arts Department for all the work that they do with our students. I also enjoyed emceeing middle school band concerts, and so it was just amazing to see all of the work that our staff does with our students and all of the talents that our students possess.
Thank you. Member Holloman.
Yes, I also, I didn't actually get to many of the exhibits, but I was downtown on a couple of different occasions a few weeks back and overheard people talking about it. And some of them were people that had students, others were just people that were in the different galleries and were really impressed with the student work. It's one way that the Anchorage community really supports the schools, supports students. It is very neat. Also had the opportunity to be at Golden View and be a judge in the We the People competition. And similarly, the assignment was for students to really understand the Declaration and the parts that were in it, and then apply it to a multinational colony on Mars. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the fact that students recognize that this can't be a colony of the U.S. This can't just be and shouldn't be governed by people on planet Earth when they're so far away. Students really had a grasp of certain things. They obviously struggled with certain things. It's again one of those activities I wish more people could see. I know we're getting a lot of emails about people that have concerns about what we do teach people in our schools about this country and how they should feel about it. I got to tell you, they feel pretty good about the United States of America. So it was a good couple of weeks in the school district. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Member Holloman. I also was at Golden View with Members Holloman and Lessons, and it really was amazing how students use their civics and government concepts to create this Mars colony. It was just, I had probably the best time. Parents were there, kids were there, the community supported it, the volunteers were there. It was great. I did want to take a minute to thank the community as well as our students and staff for giving their input and time into the superintendent search process. The board is continuing its deliberations, and we will have more information forthcoming. On Friday, I had the most delightful evening of music and dessert at Diamond High School. In there with the, I think it was the youth orchestra and then the city band. They were amazing. 7th and 8th graders from all over the city. I mean, I thought they were like high school kids to hear them, but they were 7th and 8th graders and they were amazing. So I just love, and that was their first in-person concert in 2 years. So that was amazing. I was glad to be a part of that. Dr. Bishop.
Thank you, Madam President. I've spoken enough.
Okay, anybody else have anything they'd like to share among the staff before we are at the end of our time together?
I'll take that back. I just want to let the board know we continue to testify on many different legislative items, and we'll continue to do so. This week, some very important ones are coming up in regard to funding for school districts. Thank you. Sorry, Madam President.
No, and that's a great point to end on. We really do need all board members willing and available to testify. This week is we're at a crucial time right now. Things are moving. They're moving pretty fast. So read your documents when they come in. Choose something to testify in support of funding, adequate funding, inflation-proof funding. There's a lot on the menu when it comes to legislation. Literacy, reading.
Madam President, may we also extend that same invitation to members of the community to do so?
Absolutely. It takes all of us. It's not just a board thing or a staff thing. It's everybody supporting education and however they are comfortable. But you are absolutely correct. All right. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and second to adjourn. Oh, we got to do a vote, Katie. Since we're not all in the same
What do we
room.
do without objection?
I'm sorry?
I think we could just, if there was no objection.
Is there any objection to adjourning at this time? All right. Thank you.